My man from the Coast Guard in the back.
Oh, I don't need that.
I'm from the Coast Guard, I don't need this.
Hey, give it back to him then.
He's insulted me. You know, you were talking about Ronald Reagan. I served for Ronald Reagan. He was my commanding chief, and I met him twice. One was in the White House and one in New York City, because I worked out of a headquarters unit. And I guess I'm going to lead into a question in a minute. I know Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, would have never sat down with any terrorist, including the one now in Cuba, making nonsense deals for, because Cuba's considered on the terrorist list, so was it. So what's your feelings about a president who sits down and says, yeah, I'll have coffee with you, and talks about nonsense, and puts this country in danger just because of what he
Well, I'll tell you this about Cuba. This is personal to people from New Jersey, and indulge me in a bit of a longer answer. A woman named Joanne Chesimard was a member of the Black Panther Party. And she murdered a New Jersey state trooper in cold blood with accomplices about 35 years ago, even longer, almost 40 years ago now. She was tried and convicted in a court in New Jersey of murder, and she was sent to jail. She was broken out of jail by accomplices, and she fled to Cuba. And she has been given sanctuary in Cuba ever since, paid by the Castro regime, put forward as a representative of that regime, speaking publicly, and paid by that regime to live in Cuba. She is on the FBI's top 10 domestic terrorist watch list, and she is still being harbored as we speak today in Cuba by the Castro regime. The widow of that state trooper never got her husband back. His children never got their father back. And it is a national disgrace that this president would even consider normalizing relations while they are harboring a terrorist murderer who belongs in prison in New Jersey. It is a national disgrace that the president is engaged in those conversations to even consider taking that country off the terrorist watch list. I work every day with the New Jersey State Police, and they provide protection to me every day. And I can tell you, the men and women that serve in that organization, to a person, I know are offended by the idea that justice is not being done for their brother who was murdered in the line of duty. I wrote to the president as soon as he announced normalization of relations with Cuba, and I said to Mr. President, please do not do this until they turn over Joanne Chesimard to authorities and return her to prison to serve out the sentence that she earned through her conduct and the conviction of a jury of her peers and the sentence by a duly appointed judge in our state. And she's just one example of the atrocities that have happened in Cuba. Cuba wants to normalize relations with the United States. Start acting like a normal country. Start acting like a civilized country. That's the way we get normalized relations. I would feel that way if I wasn't governor of New Jersey. But I particularly feel that way because of what happened in our state. And how can you take someone off a terrorist watch list when they are actively harboring a terrorist that's in your top 10 domestic terrorists? It's insane. And it is, as I said, I want to repeat myself, it's a national disgrace that the president is engaging in that kind of conduct. He should be ashamed of himself. All right, one last question. Don't get me all fired up now. Been on my darn best behavior. Here we go. Yes, ma'am.